How are you there? I'm building from my previous message on decolonization and how true liberation actually entails being responsible and being truly independent means not being dependent on systems and structures of foreign countries or entities, therefore pushing you to develop your own systems, be political or financial or otherwise. Hence, ZANU-PF has been struggling with economic sanctions for the past 20 years because ZANU-PF and especially Idi Mnangagwa has failed to create an economic system, a governance system and financial system that is self-sustaining and is able to withstand the fires of Washington. You do see that also Vladimir Putin has been slapped with American sanctions, but we did not see the Russian ruble crash. We did not see the Russian political and financial system crash because it has got some level of resilience, which is caused by the Russian government's ability to create their own systems. China has been replicating the American system in its all facets. And China is getting ready to rule the world, and that is why it has been able to usurp political influence of Washington in these small countries in Asia and also in Africa. Together, China and Russia are getting themselves ready to take over because of this concept I'm talking about, this concept of independence and understanding that independence is not just conquering people or dispossessing other people and just celebrating and leaving it there. True independence does not end in what we in Africa have been called the liberation of Africa. Every country in Africa has got its own date of liberation. But however, I feel like we have worshipped too much those days and worshipped, over worshipped those liberation struggles to a point where we cannot move forward. When Moses was stuck with the Israelites in the desert by the mountain, God said to Moses, "Your people have stayed too long. We have stayed too long in this mountain. Move on." I do think that we have stayed too long in the one mountain of Chimorenga. And have not understood that to be truly independent, we should now to move on and begin to become the masters of our own destinies. It's no longer white people that run our governments. Mostly in Africa, our governments are run by black people. We make the policies, and therefore we are the ones who create the laws and the regulation. Like talking about our financial sector, we should be the one who inspire good governance, who inspire the rule of law. The rule of law does not serve the Americans. You see, when the Americans say ZANU-PF, you must respect rule of law, property ownership, property rights, and then they slap you with sanctions because you are failing to adhere to that, and then you complain. It's not like those things are for the Americans' sake. No, they are for your sake. It is in the interest of ZANU-PF and the Zimbabweans and the ruling authorities that we do respect property rights. It is in the interest of the authorities to run a stable currency. So general they've got access to the reserve bank, and therefore they distort the currency prices because they can, because they've got authority. It's not in their best interest. It destroys the social fabric, the political social fabric of our nation. So any authority, any ruling authority that is self-respecting will need to understand that. As we move forward, China beginning to understand and to learn that to become a global superpower, you really need to put in line smaller countries like ZANU-PF, like Zimbabwe, from being way wide. China cannot possibly think that it can overtake the United States when it is actually surrounding itself with despotic regime who disrespect human rights. At some point, China will realize that the human rights agenda is for the sake of the one who is the principal ruler. The Americans got it a long time ago. It's not like Americans are holy people. They got it a long time ago that giving humans their rights to dignity is what creates a society that is able to conquer other societies, that's able to rule even other societies. And even in those societies that you rule, you also need to promote rule of law, good governance, and promotion of human rights. That's what maintains the superpower. And China is going to learn that sooner rather than later. And therefore, authorities like ZANU-PF led by Itim Nangako will find themselves in a place where there's no space for them anywhere in the world because of the competitive structure of global politics. China would want to overtake United States. I'm not gonna take that away from China. If China wants to rule the world, so be it. Okay, it's not a crime. It's not a sin. We can argue against it. You can have your own arguments. I do have my own arguments for and against it. But nonetheless, they do have the right to desire to lead us. If they believe that Washington is misleading us, they do have the right to create their own structures of governance, of influence. Talking about BRICS is the structure of influence that China has put up, and China's use of their currency. It is a challenge of the dominance of the African, the dominance of the US dollar in trade matters. And China can pull it through because almost all countries sell to China and buy from China. So they might as well just buy in yuan and sell in yuan and bypass the US dollar altogether, all completely. Because not much trade is going on directly with the United States anyway. But they still have a financial leverage, the Americans. We still borrow money from them. IMF from institutions or capital structures that are formed in the United States and in Europe. China recognizes that. So as China also is entering into that field of financing countries, countries could borrow in yuan, can borrow 100 billion yuan and use 100 billion yuan to buy products from China and sell to China and receive yuan without even the use of a US dollar. US sanctions won't come to effect at all. Whether they freeze or assets, you don't even need to buy anything in the United States. You don't even need to buy houses there. You can buy a house in Zimbabwe or China. That is if you are China oriented. Now what I'm saying this to highlight a certain issue of independence and why it is important for authorities to be self-sustainable, to respect human rights, to respect the rule of law, to run a financial system that is just. Justice serves the purpose of the rulers. Unjust rulers are not sustainable. The system is like umlilo wamaphepha. So those that want to oppress you will always desire that you never develop those systems. That is why I do believe that Itim Nangagwa is actually Washington's favorite, because he is not developing systems of good governance, systems of sustenance that will make us elevate as black people and possibly compete with the white man. Truthfully speaking, the white man is competing with the black man, and he will never allow, if he can, not that he is not God, but if he can, he will not have it that a black man rule his country justly and improve the socio-economic dynamics of his own citizens. Therefore, people like Edim Nangagwa become the preferred candidate for a competitive, white-dominated global economic and political structure. So we need to understand that and conclude that in the new Zimbabwe, we are going to be black people who are going to be just, who are going to be equal, who are going to be equal, who are going to be promote human rights, not because the Americans say so, but because we do understand that it is actually to our benefit, not to the benefit of the Americans. Certainly, the Americans do not want us to respect human rights in as far as their competitive nature is involved or is concerned. They would rather defeat us by having us having poor governance structures. So improving our government structures is in our own very own interests, not foreign interests. Do you understand? We need to understand that and eliminate fear. Don't fear a white person because you're black or because they are white. I know historically speaking, these people have imposed fear upon people. But if you want to be independent, you should stop fearing your colonizers. You should stop fearing your enemies. You should have self belief in yourself and know that you are capable of doing things. Do not be intimidated or underestimate yourself to think that you are less worthy. You are worthy, you are well equipped, you have got your ancestors behind you. We have got your God, God of Abraham, Isaac. By the way, we must claim our ancestors. Abraham is our ancestor. All right. Okay, so let mind be decolonized and know that even the words of scripture are actually the words that speak directly to you. The Israel that the Bible speaks of in the Old Testament is going to be scattered all over the world. That's going to be punished for centuries and will be brought back to their land. Is speaking about you. It is your story. You do not need to argue with other people whose story it is. You just need to know that it is your story and run with it. I always see the thing about we black people that what we need to get over from is this thing of always going to white people to argue them and telling them what our heritage, our cultural and religious heritage is. Don't tell them anything. You don't owe them any explanation. Just know what is rightfully yours and run with it. Okay? Just teach your fellow people and run with it. Alright? Because those that deny you of your own cultural heritage will never accept what you're saying. If they see that you're speaking the truth, they will try to suppress your voices. Take a look at what they're doing to me. My voice is suppressed because it's true. Because I speak truth to power every hour. Do you understand? Industrialization. Let us talk about industrialization. As I said in the previous video, that there's three dynamics that I wanted to be looking at: extraction of resources, industrialization, and also the commercialization, or rather consumerism, whereby the industrialized goods are sold to the consumers. We as African people are actually not part of the consumers. We just consume soya beans and cheap things just to survive. Food. The consumers really are the Europeans and Americans. Why? Because they have got an economic power, meaning they've got money. That's what it means. Economic power. They've got money. What does the money come from? It comes from industrialization and also through colonization that they've been doing over the years. So we have got wealth expropriated from the part of from our parts of this world, and therefore we have been impoverished and therefore not part of the consumer society. But in the extractive industries, our land, the places where we're born, are being used to extract the resources that we have that we do not fully participate in the profiteering of those industries, right? So now you must understand that when the white government in Rhodesia separated from the British monarchy, some of the reasons that they did so, in my view, was the fact that they began to industrialize. Remember Bulawayo? I'm from Bulawayo. I was born in that region. Okay, I was born in Matepelele, and I grew up in Bulawayo. That region, Bulawayo, which was the seat of the king Mziligas, that Robert Moffat told Nzilikas to go and plant his kingdom there. And he dominated the rest of the Matabeleland region, also Mashonaland region, which what created what we call modern day Zimbabwe. He used to call it Mtwagazi. By the way, Mtwagazi meant the whole country, the whole of Zimbabwe, Matabeleland and Mashonaland and Maitlands and Manicaland. Now that region, that place Bulawayo, when the white people came to invade us, it was the last place that they conquered. By the way, the point I want to say that is where they began industrializing. Bulawayo Industries, the one of the with the foremost and the most powerful industry in Southern Africa, even more powerful than South Africa. South Africa overtook us later. But as far as industrialization, building industries, we just go to Bulawayo. You will see the relic, the old industries. It used to be an industrial hub for the whole of Southern Africa. Okay, Bulawayo, where I was born, where I come from. It was the white Rhodesians that set that thing up. Now that in my view is what really upsetted. In my view, that's what upsetted the British Empire, because remember the British Empire was interested in extraction and only industrializing in Britain and consumption in Britain. But these white folks rebelled. All right, this is nothing to do with white versus black, but it's about people who rebelled from the British Empire because they wanted to be independent. So Zimbabwe's Rhodesia, okay, but you can call it Zimbabwe's Rhodesia. Rhodesia, the unilateral declaration of independence was the first attempt of independence, which was a real independence, which we should, as the black government should learn from, because unilateral declaration of independence made them out to be aware that they will need to put the extra effort, hence the industrialization. Hence, Ian Smith was able to counter British sanctions because he grew in independence, in independent political structures, independent economic structures. And he still kept his economy intact, and he still saved the vast majority of his base. Our base as black Zimbabweans should be all black people in Zimbabwe. I'm not excluding other cultures or white people or Indians, whatever, but the base is predominantly black. The others you should drop in there. I'm not gonna make videos about black people and then talk about white people, talk about Indians and whatever. When I say Zimbabwean, I include all of you. Okay, even if you are not a black person, if you whether you're a white Zimbabwean and if you identify as Zimbabweans, all the things that I'm talking about pertain to you, even though the majority are black. I mean, when I say black Zimbabwe, you should now have the intellectual understanding that I also include those that may not be black in color but identify as Zimbabwean, not as British. If you are white, you identify as British, then I'm not talking about you. Okay. But if you are white, you are born in Zimbabwe, and you identify as a Zimbabwean. When I speak about the Zimbabwe black country, I'm including you too, even though you're not black. So that's how I expect to be taken when I speak about the country like Zimbabwe, the country of black people. Okay. So I think I've made that point there. So So these white Rhodesians were able to achieve true independence because they did the extraction, they industrialized from what they extracted, and they consumed what their industries produced, and began to develop an ecosystem within the region of Nyasaland, Zambia, including together working together with South Africa and other countries in the region. That kind of independence was not liked by the British Empire. You see, now the British Empire fought with fellow whites. Okay, these are not black people. It's not racism. It's a matter of being independent from the capitalists in London. That's why I believe that our Zimbabwe that we'll build is also needed to understood by the capitalists that are going to be in Zimbabwe. I'm going to be working with capitalists at the end of the day. Whether those capitalists be black or those capitalists be white. You see what I'm talking about? When I talk about the new Zimbabwe for black people, I am not talking about that. I'm not saying everyone's going to be black in color like this. But black people or black Zimbabwe is a term that we use to identify those that are going to be Zimbabwean in the new Zimbabwe. And now some of them, especially the capitalist of them, I'm not going to be black, they're going to be white. Some are going to be Indian. Some of them are not going to be even be born in Zimbabwe. Some of them might have been born in Malaysia or born in Britain, even actually even being born around King Charles himself, and they just decide to revolt from the British system and say, no, we're going to adopt the Zimbabwean system that the young man Ngobani Zondo is advocating for and is building in Africa. So all that we need is just to be a white capitalist in London who just says, now I'm tired of UK. Okay, I'm gonna go to Africa. I'm going to support this new black government. You see, the use of the word black government doesn't mean 100% black people. It's just a term that we have allocated what we are for simplicity's sake. But otherwise, we can have. I would love to have King Charles' uh, son. What's his name? Prince Prince William and his wife Meghan Markle. He resigned from the British monarchy. He too can say, I'm tired of California. I'm gonna go to Africa. I love the African sun. Let me just be part of the Zimbabwean miracle. You see what I'm talking about? I will still call it a black Zimbabwe even if the white son of a king is there. Because that's the identity, that's the name that we just wanna use. You might have some Chinese people. But we have Chinese investors already in Zimbabwe. We're like, okay, now this Itim Nankakwa is not making it nice for us. We need a new system. Do you understand? Then we can move forward with independence, meaning that the system that we are creating in Zimbabwe, which has got black Zimbabweans, white Zimbabweans, Indian Zimbabweans, or Asian Zimbabweans, and also white Europeans, white Americans, Indian Indians, Chinese, who have decided that this economy or political entity, which is the new Zimbabwe, is going to be a vehicle that we will use as capitalists to divorce, okay, from other capital structures out there, that where we came from, whether they came from China CCP or they got sick of the swamp in Washington. Okay, some guys in Wall Street who are sick of the bank stars in Wall Street, and they're like, okay, let's do this banking thing in the new Zimbabwe that this young man Ngobani Zondo is going to be leading and spearheading in Africa, because we want to create an economic system, social, political, economic system that we envision. But we cannot do it in Europe, we cannot do it in America, we cannot do it in China, we cannot do it in India. But we are Chinese, we are Indians, we are British, we are Americans, we are Republicans, we are Democrats, but actually we want to do something new. Let's go and do this experiment in Zimbabwe. Let's remove that despot, that liar, idiot, that thief who hates people, and let's go to these unloved, deserted black Zimbabweans and begin to show them love and create an economic system that is even beneficial to us, the capitalists. Remember, capitalists come to make profit. Let's go to Africa. Let us continue with extraction, but also let us industrialize in Africa. Let us create our own very own consumers in Africa. For the consumers in China are subject to the whims of the CCP. The consumers in Europe are subject to the whims of Brussels. The consumers in the United States are subject to the corruption in Washington. And therefore we can create another structure or another group of consumers in Africa who are going to be led by a governance system and structure that we set up in Harare, with our boy yours truly being at the forefront of that revolution. This is the revolution I'm talking about, a revolution within the capitalist structure. I'm talking about the capitalists themselves need a revolution. The Chinese billionaires and millionaires need a place of freedom, a freedom that the CCP cannot give them. I will give them. The capitalists in Washington and in New York and in California need a certain freedom that they cannot get from the shenanigans of Washington, from the overregulation of Washington, from the constant attack of the billionaire class by Washington, who might need a breather. You say, of course we are Americans, of course we love America, but America is crushing us. We need a new country where we can be part of. Talking of British expatriates, British people who are well oiled, well financed, they love Britain. No, it's not about hating where you're coming from. You love your own country, but you want to move out. You want to experience something else. There is something that is in the inside of you that is yearning, but the problem is the political structure of your own country. And you look around the world, there's no country that is right. You look into Africa, you love Africa, but it's just ruled by despots. Nothing works there. It's just corrupt leaders. There's no structure, there's no respect for human rights, there's no nothing. And then you come along this video. Then you meet the potential future president of an African nation that will build an economics and political ecosystem that the global capitalists will need to be part of too. I'm talking about a revolution within the class of the uber rich, a revolution within the capitalists themselves. Just like the British white who created their own El Dorado in Rhodesia. When they finally discovered that there's no El Dorado in Zimbabwe, there's not much gold as they thought, they began to industrialize and create a system or a structure of governance that was worthwhile. So we too, as capitalists that are revolting, need to create our own culture and our own structure. And this is part of what I would like to call my new Zimbabwe, according to me. Not according to Chamis. I've never heard him speak much about the new Zimbabwe. I don't think he spends much time and effort or applying his mind on such trivial matters. The most important thing that they're busy with, that side of town, is they're being in the business of opposition politics. You can make a lot of money just by opposing ED and never removing ED. I don't want to oppose ED. I want to remove ED Mnangagwa. There's a difference. Opposition political parties are resting on their laurels and benefit and reaping the benefits of opposition, of opposing. I don't want the benefits of opposing. I want the victory of removing a despotic leader from power. Holy is the Lord. My name is Ngobani Zondo, and I am running to become the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, to replace the despotic, autocratic regime of Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, who has turned our country into a banana republic and is turning it into a family dynasty. I'm in the running to change all of that, and I need all your help. I don't care who you are, whether you're black or you're white, whether you're Zimbabwean or you're not Zimbabwean. What matters is, do you want to be part of a new political system, an exciting thing in the world? When was the last time this earth our world ever had something politically exciting. Everything is politically boring except for wars. But what's so exciting about wars? People die. I'm not calling you to go to a war. I'm calling you to be part of economic and social and political reforms in Africa. And it will be beautiful for everyone, including non-Africans. So don't underestimate yourself and say, ah, no, I'm just an Asian. Or, ah, no, I'm just a white American. What part do I have in a black Africa with these black people? No, a lot. You have got a huge part to play. And I cannot pull this thing through without you. Africa cannot pull it through on its own. It needs support from outsiders that have got political power, that have got economic power, that have the capitalists, that have got experience of running the world, rich families that have been running the world for generations. We cannot ignore them. You need to be part of my system and join me instead of fighting me. I'm not your enemy, I'm your friend. Heal from whatever hate you've heard from Africa. I think there's a really need of healing that some of our rich folks need to go through. Heal quickly, please. Accept that things happened. Accept that people feel the way that they feel. And get you in a position where you're able to work with others who are different like you, who think different like you, who look different from you, who believe differently from you. And be able to be happy and take along in the same bus. I am the bus driver. I'll drive everybody of all ethnicities and all different backgrounds and prove to you that together we can. It is possible for this planet to transcend from ever in a war zone to become in a place where we're able to rebuild together, transform our planet, and perhaps there is more that we can do beyond the borders of our atmosphere. Perhaps if we're united, working together instead of fighting each other, we might find another planet Earth, another planet where life is possible. We might actually together colonize the universe. My name is Ngobani Zondo once again, and I'm running to be the CEO and president of what I term the New Zimbabwe. And thank you for listening. If you're still listening to me by now, it means we've got tremendous faith. I appreciate that. And see you in the trenches. Have a good day.